Next question. Over here.
Mr. Joyce, on the wage freeze, what proportion of your workforce can you immediately move on to the wage freeze, and what proportion are on current enterprise agreements? And secondly, with that second lot, how are you going to avoid the problem that Toyota had, where they went to their workforce, wanted to change their enterprise agreement, and were rebuffed?
So we're going to be working through, which you're absolutely right, there's different complexities in EBAs that are open and EBAs that are currently closed. Qantas has, I think, 54 different EBAs across 14 different union groups, some of which are open today, which our pay policy going forward will be no pay increases until the company makes money. And then the EBAs that are closed, we'll be talking to those unions directly, and in some cases waiting until the EBA opens up and then applying it. We'll make sure that at the end of the process that we've addressed all of the areas and have quality across all parts of the group, and this applies to all parts of the group. Yes, over here. Gentlemen.
Hey there, just a couple of things. Both John Borghetti and John Sharp from Rex have made the argument that if there is any sort of debt guarantee, it should apply to the whole industry. Do you agree with that? And if not, why not? And just one other thing. Around Jetstar Asia, the freeze there, I mean, your competitors are expanding quite rapidly in the Southeast Asian low-cost carrier market. Is this a recognition that it's too tough in that market now?
Well, I think both sides, first to your first question first, I think both sides of politics recognise that there is an unlevel playing field. They recognise that the Qantas Sale Act shackles Qantas, and that doesn't apply to any other players in the industry. I think the Treasurer actually had four different principles that apply to governments getting involved with businesses and industries. He said, first of all, is there an act or piece of legislation that uniquely applies to the company and acts as a ball and chain? I think some of the references were, and clearly with Qantas that's the case. He said, secondly, is a company competing against SOEs, state-owned enterprises, that are distorting the market? And again, clearly with Qantas, that's the case. Our international competition and now our major domestic competition is supported by SOEs. Thirdly, is there a national interest? And Qantas is the national carrier, has a huge national footprint, has a huge national interest, strategic for this country. So clearly Qantas ticks that box. And then the fourth one is clearly the company doing what it can to make sure that it manages its own affairs. We are clearly, over the last 5 years, making big inroads into our cost base. We have to do more, and today's plan clearly indicates that we are doing more. So on your second part of your question? Jetstar in Asia. Jetstar in Asia for us, we have to, as we said, make tough decisions across the individual group and make sure we prioritise the core of our operation. Jetstar in Asia has still to bed down its growth in Japan, its other activities in Vietnam and Hong Kong. And in Southeast Asia and Singapore in particular, we've seen huge growth in capacity by the competition that has strained the profitability of that business. We believe with all of the priorities around the group, the appropriate thing is to stop the growth in that business, and the board of Jetstar Asia have agreed to stop the growth in that business and consolidate our resources and activity on the other areas in the group that have a priority. Yeah.
Alan, you're retiring a bunch of 747s early, and you're deferring eight new A380s. Is that going to mean that you're going to have to... Where are those 747s flying at the moment? And does that mean you're going to contract your international network?
Okay.
I think, as I said to an earlier question, this is a lot of this is facilitated by fleet simplification and the coming together of the fleet plan that's been planned over a long period of time. Those 747s, the oldest, 6 of them, we've accelerated the retirement. And we're going to be making some changes to the international network that free up some A380 aircraft. But also, as the 787s come into Jetstar, they're freeing up A330s, and those A330s will fly both domestically and internationally. So we will end up with a fleet for Qantas that has 737s and A330-200s flying domestically, and A380s, young 747s and A330-300s flying internationally. So we will have a much simpler fleet, a much more efficient fleet, a young fleet with great product on it, and that will help drive efficiencies and the right network for that part of the business.
Other questions? Yep.
Alan, could we go back and have a quick look at the job losses? You've talked about management, non-operational roles, maintenance and catering. What other skills are you targeting to lose, and will it include pilots and flight attendants?
Well, of course, what we're saying is every aspect of the company gets impacted by this, because there is less flying. We're changing the network. We're changing the size of aircraft operating on certain routes. That means less operating crew, pilots and cabin crew needed across those changes in that part of the operation. So every part of the business gets impacted by this. What we are doing, and the principles that we are employing on this, is that obviously safety is going to be our #1 priority in everything that we do. Secondly, we have a focus on making sure that the customer and the customer needs are satisfied all the way through this. And thirdly, we are protecting as many jobs as we possibly can with the changes that we're making. We do believe that there are parts of the business, like as we mentioned, Perth, Singapore, that are losing significant amounts of money that we have to withdraw from, and changes that we have to make in aircraft like the 747s, which are older aircraft, consuming a lot more fuel, and we've brought forward the retirement of them. Unfortunately, they do have an impact on employees in all parts of the company when those changes are made. Yeah.
Alan, the government said it's legislating to make change to the Qantas Sale Act. How optimistic are you that that will get through, and what impact will that have on Qantas?
Well, to be very clear, I mean, the Qantas Sale Act, I think even the Deputy Prime Minister made a comment in early January when he's acting Prime Minister and said it was going to be difficult to see that getting through the Parliament. It needs to get through, changes to that need to get through the lower house and the upper house. Certainly the Labour Party and the Greens are not in support of it, so it needs a change of the Senate to even have a chance. And then I think Mr Palmer's party have also said they're not in support of it. So in the short term, we don't see any changes that are likely to occur on that. The issue for us, therefore, is how does the government level the playing field in the short term? The action is needed in the short term, and they need to take the appropriate action to make sure that the distortion that everybody clearly recognises doesn't continue. And the issue with the Qantas Sale Act is going to be the length of time. It could be months, it could be years before that act changes. That's it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, so that was live from Sydney, the Qantas CEO Alan Joyce, after that announcement this morning of a $235 million half-year loss. Alan Joyce referring there to increased competition, particularly from Virgin, and increased fuel costs. So over the next 3 years, 5,000 jobs to go, the equivalent of 5,000 full-time jobs. There'll be including a reduction of management and non-operational roles by 1,500, and the closure of the Avalon maintenance base as previously announced. And there'll be a wage freeze for all Qantas employees until Qantas is profitable again. The plane fleet will be changed significantly, 50 aircraft to be deferred or sold over the coming years. The fleet will go from 11 aircraft types down to 7. A short time ago, Qantas shares were down 9.5%. OK, we'll leave that there. That was the Victorian Opposition Leader, Daniel Andrews. I'm joined now from Melbourne by the Federal Secretary of the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineers Association, Steve Purvinas. Steve Purvinas, a tough day for your members. Do you acknowledge, though, that Qantas is in an incredibly tough position and has to make some hard decisions?
Yeah, Qantas certainly are in a tough position, but it's not our members who put it there, it's the bloke in charge of the airline. I actually found it quite surreal listening to him sit there talk, and this is what he said in answer to the increased competition from overseas competitors. Other international carriers continue with a loss-making strategy. Well, it was only just today that Air New Zealand announced a record half-yearly profit. So he can talk about loss-making strategies, but it's actually Qantas are the ones that have got the strategy wrong.
Okay, so putting aside for the moment your strong feelings about the performance of Alan Joyce, 5,000 jobs to go, 1,500 in management and non-operational roles.
Yep.
Are you the fact that so many are going in management and non-operational roles? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, Qantas certainly are a little bit top-heavy when it comes to management, but just on further information, because I know a lot of our members will be watching this, we have heard that 175 LAMEs, licensed aircraft engineers across the country, are also going to go with this. We believe that to be split 53 in Melbourne, about 65 in Sydney, and the others from the other bases.
What kind of impact will that have?
Look, we're hoping that we can meet with management next week and try and make some arrangements to minimise the impact of those job losses. Maybe it might be different rostering or leave burn programs. So we're hoping it can be as easy as possible on our members. Yep.
So just getting back to my first question, do you acknowledge that hard decisions have to be made?
Yeah, look, Qantas certainly is struggling at the moment, but we've heard about 46% increase in capacity into the country, and Qantas have only increased their capacity by 2%. But the thing is, passenger numbers have increased by 46%. The whole strategy is askew. All the other carriers have increased to match the demand in the market, but Qantas haven't. So the economic position that Qantas find themselves in today is only their own doing.
Yep. So is there any need for jobs to go as far as you're concerned, or should Qantas be expanding and trying to increase capacity?
Well, we talk about capacity growth. All the other carriers have increased capacity growth and jobs by 46%. Qantas are going the other way. You don't make money by contracting your business. And what we've seen today from Mr Joyce is pretty much the same strategy that's been in place for years. Retire some of the older aircraft that we're always going to retire anyway. Continue with those Jetstar Asian franchises that have never turned 1 cent of profit. So the real problem that we have is that the course they are heading in is exactly the same as it was yesterday, and that's not working.
So is there a need for any of these 5,000 jobs to go?
Look, I can't comment yet until we've met with the airline about where and when the jobs may be leaving. I mean, if they're retiring 767 aircraft, they may be able to retire 767 pilots. However, they are also increasing A330 aircraft, so they may be able to swap and fly on a different plane. So you really need to know further details on the 5,000 before you can make any detailed comment on it.
Yeah, well, the details that he'd mentioned or that have been outlined in the Qantas media statement, so 1,500 in management and non-operational roles, and as you said, Qantas is, as far as you're concerned, a bit top-heavy with management. Operational positions affected by fleet and network changes. What do you understand that to be?
Yeah, that's like the retirement of 747 aircraft would mean less people, whether it be engineers, pilots, flight attendants that service those aircraft. But remember, they're being replaced by other aircraft as well. So, but overall the strategy is wrong. They should be increasing their fleets like every other airline, and most of the other airlines are profitable, not decreasing.
The other area that's identified in this media release is the restructure of line maintenance operations.
Yeah, the restructure of line maintenance operations is the 175 licensed engineers I've talked about already. So again, we've spoke with management yesterday, and we've scheduled a meeting in for early next week. So we'll get further details on that there, but that probably relates to the retirement of some of the aircraft as well.
Yeah, and it also includes, this 5,000 does include the closure of the Avalon maintenance base as previously announced. How many people did that involve?
Yeah, so the 5,000 included 1,000 job losses that have already been announced, which was 300 people who are going to lose their positions when the Avalon maintenance base closes on the 28th of March. OK,
I will have to leave it there, Steve Pervenis. Thanks very much for that, because the Opposition Leader, Bill Shorten, stepping up.
Today is truly devastating news for 5,000 hard-working, professional, skilled Qantas staff and their families. It's also a very sad day for Australia. There are few things more synonymous with calling Australia home than Qantas Airways. This is the worst day for aviation people since the collapse of Ansett.